Okay, so the media and general justification for our piece. One of the main ideas surrounding the media aspect of our performance was inspired by the Worcester Group, which I talk a little bit more in depth about in my research. The main idea behind this is that we would have a video projected in the background and live action on stage, obviously allowing the audience to pick what they wanted to watch, so yet still be able to obviously understand our plot and what's going on. We also base the piece on the idea of mnemonics, which is derived from the Greek word of memory, or relating to memory. We use this concept to show that something in the present can trigger memories without you giving your brain conscious permission to do so. We also use this specifically for our piece as it supports the idea that with patients, things going on around them in the hospital room can actually influence what's going on inside your brain, whether that means triggering memories or generating brain activity. This is the sort of only naturalistic, unedited video we have of Flora, and we wanted to use this to sort of show that she's just leaving a house, she's on her way to Ben's office, and she's unbeknown to what is about to happen to her. And it also represents it's one of her final memories. It was also a good way for us to set up for the end of the video, in which Flora dies and leaves this world by entering the Tunnel of Light. So we repeated this bit of the video of her leaving through the door again. This footage also shows how she's entering onto the other side, so to speak, and we didn't want to shut the door fully in the videos. We wanted to allow a bit of intrigue for the audience, as they're obviously wondering where she's going, and also at the end for them to finally understand that she was dancing on the edge of life and death. We used Pitt's hallway for this, as we wanted to make sure that the walls were white and in keeping with the white tunnel of light at the end. Okay, so car crash. We were trying to find a way to film this on a low budget without actually having to crash a car, and we thought the easiest way was to make it as if it's nighttime and focus on the brightness of the headlights. Also, the darkness of the video represented the darkness on stage and worked quite well with the lighting that we had. So for this montage, we wanted to represent the idea that Flora's life is flashing before her eyes, and that these are the memories that she's seeing. So we've got clips of her childhood, clips of her and her boyfriend, her and her sister, and we made sure that we had a lot of flower imagery in the video, as this is something that we repeat throughout. And we shot Flora amongst natural scenery, like within the park and the running around a tree, to reflect her personality. The flowers are also they sort of represent a certain sadness, as at the end of Flora's monologue in the beginning, she says, "And all I saw was flowers," which hints that she never really made the most of her life or understood what was important, that there wasn't any particular exciting memories that flashed before her eyes. So throughout the media we decided to show less and less flower imagery as well, to sort of show her dying process. Okay, so this is the initial medical scene. The initial medical media, we just wanted music really, if I'm honest, as we felt having the video as well would have detracted from the powerfulness of the scene, as it was almost completely improvised on stage, and we wanted the audience to focus solely on Dan and Abby and to feel the emotion they were radiating through their movements. But we felt just having a plain background wasn't enough. So we started with a dark screen and decided to slowly fade up to white to complement the emotions on stage. So obviously they're in the darkness, they're confused, they're in fear, they're frustrated over what's happening to Flora. And this is also reflected in the soundscape as well, as we use many complicated terms at the beginning to sort of inflict the same confusion on the audience as the characters were experiencing. And then by the end of the scene, the words become simplified, the characters are calmer and still and immensely sad, and the white background in the media represents that the characters have come to terms that Flora is in the coma, and also have more of an understanding from the doctors about her particular condition. Okay, so He Loves Me Not. We wanted to use specific memories in Flora's mind to use throughout the piece. So we have the ribbon that features in the video and on stage, which represents her memory of how her and Ben met. We wanted the audience to understand this, so we used the video, the media, as a tool to show the storyline more here. So as you can see, like, she chases after the ribbon, Dan picks it up, and they end up having a conversation on a park bench, getting to know one another. The ribbon also represented this idea of the trace of herself, which is actually where we got the name from. And then you have another specific memory, which is the use of the Coldplay's The Scientist and Ben singing The Scientist, as we wanted to portray that this was their song. It was something that they shared together, and he sang it to her in their relationship. Okay, so Sleeping Beauty A. This explores the relationship between Flora and Eri and how their parents' death affected them both, as Eri is the older sister and ends up becoming this sort of protective parent figure towards Flora. We wanted the video to stay quite simple and obvious. Obviously, we had the issue that our actors would have to play children, and sometimes this can be very hit and miss and can cheapen the scene. So we thought we'd have a montage of children playing in the background to counteract any negative effects adults playing children could have had. This is another way, again, in which we use the video to tell and show the naturalistic plot of our piece. We also just like the idea of having clips of children playing, as there's something quite heartwarming and happy about watching them play, which obviously builds up for their tragic loss in Sleeping Beauty B. So the scene between these two childhood montages is Ben and Eri arguing in the hospital. We wanted to split up Sleeping Beauty A and B, as it becomes clearer in Ben and Eri's argument that Eri is this protective and motherly role towards her sister, and it also brings meaning to her line, "I can't lose her, I can't do this all over again," making reference to obviously the loss of her parents, which obviously then leads nicely on to the Sleeping Beauty B memory, in which Eri tells Flora their parents are dead. So Sleeping Beauty B. The video for this again is pretty simplistic and similar to the previous one, however with a hopefully different effect on the audience due to the nature of the scene. Whereas it was happy to watch the children play on stage and in the video has an entirely different meaning now, as they won't ever be able to play as happily as they did. Originally we were going to have sort of sound effects and a video of children crying, but it's actually quite hard to find these videos, and even on YouTube people only film their kids crying if it's funny. So that definitely wasn't what we were trying to go for. We were also going to have a montage of the car crash, but it felt too obvious, and we much preferred the contrast of seeing slow motion happy childhood memories on video with the devastation that was happening on stage, and it actually ended up working much better in the end. We did end up tweaking it a bit by putting faded clips of graveyards integrated into the background. So, they were so faded that it kind of made it look like they were lying on the gravestones or playing on them to add that sort of effect. So, DMT scene. For the DMT scene, we wanted to symbolise this idea that Flora is getting sort of pumped full of chemicals while she's in this coma, and we wanted to represent through the media the brain activity that's going on whilst this is happening. We tried to make it look like synapses and neurons firing off, and that's why when it flashes it's meant to represent that sudden brain activity. We also wanted it to stimulate this idea that, as Ben says, everything is chemical. The idea that we're just this chemical structure and that's all we are. And then obviously on stage we had the ensemble represent these chemical structures as well as brain activity. We actually weren't going to have the second half of DMT when Flora and Ben actually take the drug, but from our research of the experience, from personal accounts on YouTube to accounts and information from Rick Strassman's documentary DMT, The Spirit Molecule, we found it really hard to describe, so we thought it best to try and show it. And we drew influence from the movie Enter the Void, in which there's a DMT trip scene. I think I linked it to Tumblr, but basically it's like a really similar concept of what you can see, the geometrical patterns and shapes, and we also wanted the audience to feel like they were accompanying the couple on this journey.